Right. I'm ready to start if you're
All right,
ready to go.
I'm ready to go. I'm right here.
Okay.
Welcome to the Tiger Nexus Podcast, a place where you'll find interviews with content creators and geeks alike. Your host, Ty Tiger, has delved upon the Nexus and found interesting content creators and geeks of all fandoms. This podcast is connected to the Zero Hero Network. And now we dive in with another episode!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tiger Nexus podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ty Tiger, and welcome to the first episode of Movie Dumpster Dive of 2025. Of course, Movie Dumpster Dive is a sub-series on the podcast where I am joined by its creator, Ben. Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm good, Ty. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. It's terrible weather in Wales right now, so I'm
How
glad
is
I'm
it?
indoors.
It is just 52 degrees Fahrenheit here, and
Damn.
it might rain in the morning. It may not rain, but it was supposed to rain the last several hours, and it hasn't, so
Fair enough.
whatever.
So quickly before we dive in, I just want to make a couple things well known. First things first, me and Ben have discussed, and we are going to plan Movie Dumpster Dive a little bit better. We only managed to get 2 episodes out in 2024. We plan on kind of making it so it's either every 4 to 6 episodes, kind of around about that margin where you'll get a Movie Dumpster Dive. That gives us both plenty of time to come up with the next movie, me to watch it, Ben to watch it if he wants to rewatch it, that type of deal. And also, these films are not bad movies. These films are not good movies. They don't follow any category. At the moment, they're literally just being decided between me and Ben. And we're kind of using the formula of, hey, one person likes this film, the other person doesn't. That's kind of like our influence of our choices. But eventually, throughout 2025, we shall get the partners to pick films from like Zero to Hero and stuff. They can pick films for us, and they will have a bit of an influence. But that'll be later on down the year. But just to clarify that there's no, pick or like there's no list or anything to follow. So like you may get a movie that's, for an example, this film that we're talking about today might just be thrown in the middle, and that is today's movie. We're talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, which, for the first time, I actually deem in high regards, and Benjamin over here does not like, which I like this twist,
No.
because we haven't done this yet.
No, until Force Awakens came around, it was my least favorite Star Wars movie. Now, it's not one I hate like The Force Awakens, but I have some issues.
Please start listing your issues with a Star Wars film that I deem in high regards. Please, Ben, continue.
Okay, so you know how we talked about the Spider-Man, the first movie, how that's a loading piece of garbage.
Yes.
Well, you didn't, but I did. Some of the same issues. I think the acting in this one is it's almost like I don't know if I know they care about it, but I think I don't know. I don't care much for the acting in this, especially Hayden Christensen. I think his acting was much better in episode 2 than it was. I think he was a little more animated, a little more emotional in that movie. In this one, he's stiff, like super stiff, especially when he goes to the dark side. He's like, I know he's supposed to be like no emotion, but it just comes off as more stiff and trying too hard to be non-emotional instead of being Darth Vader. Darth Vader, I guess you could say. I think some of the special effects here is overall good, but I think there's some little issues with some of it just being a little too, I don't know, something. One of my biggest issues is the editing in this movie. It's the way it's cut is kind of choppy, especially in the scene where he becomes Darth Vader. Because you have the little shot where he he becomes Darth Vader, and then it's like a really quick shot to the Emperor whenever he's like telling him to go and kill all the Jedi. It just doesn't make much sense. Also, with him becoming, and this is an issue with episode 1 and 2 more than it is episode 3. I felt like in the prequels, they did not do enough to actually develop Anakin to become Darth Vader. Like, there's emotional moments and there's moments in episode 2 that you kind of see it, but then you stop seeing it once this movie started, and you don't really see it till like 10 minutes before he becomes Darth Vader. It's just too sudden, too quick. Same thing for Palpatine. This is one of my issues with the Palpatine in episode 3. And some of this has to do with the marketing, because I'm a stickler for, I know in episode 3, Star Wars fans know Palpatine is the Emperor. But in episode 1 and 2, it's extremely subtle. And then it goes from him just being a douchebag chancellor, and you're like, oh no, I know this guy's going to be evil now, but there was no really lead up to that as well. But in the marketing too, they already gave you that he's going to be evil, that Palpatine's evil. So I was a Star Wars fan, so I knew it. But just in the marketing back in 2005, if you knew nothing about Star Wars and you were just 1, 2, and you hadn't seen 4, 5, and 6, and going into 3, and you see the previews, you're like, wait a minute, how is he evil? He's supposed to be a good guy. So that's a marketing issue I have. But I don't know. The list could go on. I'm sure the more we talk, the more I'll find some stuff. Anywho, that's my rant. That's my TED Talk.
Okay, so I do agree on one thing you mentioned there. I completely 110% agree with one thing you mentioned there. Mm-hmm. And that is the build-up to Anakin becoming Darth Vader. Because in number 1, we get introduced to Anakin as a little boy. He's a kid. And we get weird random lore that they throw at us. But that's a discussion for a different episode. And then in number 2, of course, we have the fact that his mother dies and he decides to kill, almost a whole race of aliens by himself, which goes against the Jedi way. But that's one stepping point. And if they kept on that, it would have gone fine. But all of a sudden now he's back to being okay, and he's teaming up with Obi-Wan Kenobi and all this drama. And then in number 3, I will give you that the build up is literally he does this one bad thing because of trauma, and then there's another however long of episode 2 left, and then it's half of episode 3, and then bam, he's the bad guy all of a sudden. I will give you that one. That I agree with. I wish there was more build up. Maybe end number 2 on him doing something he shouldn't be doing, or saying something he shouldn't, or something. There could have been more, more of a build up to him being one of the biggest iconic movie villains of all time. I don't know if anyone agrees there, but Darth Vader is literally one of the most iconic movie villains of all time. Let's be fair.
Yes.
So when you said about his acting's a little stiff, I kind of get it, but the way that I saw it is when he's with Padme, he's really smitten in a creepy way. I don't know how to explain it, but he's really sweet with her. He tells how beautiful she is. There's a really cringy, but it is quite sweet at the same time line where she's brushing her hair, and they're like, yeah, but it's because I'm so in love with you, and I'm like, okay, guys, just get a room, please. It's cringy, but it's sweet. But when he becomes Darth Vader, all of a sudden, that smitten, loving cringiness that he has about him changes to, okay, I want power, I need to save Padme, I'm going to kill everybody type deal. And there isn't much of a tone difference, but I like that because if they did it too dramatic, it could have ruined the movie. The fact that there isn't much of a shift, kind of plays on the idea of, well, he's meant to be the chosen one, the Force lays out things for you, etc., etc. This was always meant to happen type deal. It almost plays on that. And then you're talking about the effects. Now, can I just say, for 2005, this film didn't do too bad. For 2005 now we're talking. This film,
Yeah.
it's not terrible. There are worse films that are coming out this year that look worse than Star Wars
That is
Episode
true.
3.
That is true.
You know, there is some scenes that I did pick up on that are a bit jarring, and once you notice them, it's almost uncomfortable to watch, and I find it in scenes that aren't dramatic. So, for example, when Sidious finds Anakin burnt on the ground, and he points at him, he's like, there he is, you go grab him. The clones turn around and say, yeah, and they go get the gurney. The clones look like they've just been, like, cropped from one video and edited into this video. It looks so out of place. They don't look like they're in that scene at all. You know, like on TikTok, you can like use CapCut and get like, you know, a bit of a movie and you can put it on like a picture of yours or something. It looks like that. And I noticed that rewatching it. I rewatched this the other day. I will be rewatching watching for the first time, possibly, every movie that we do for Movie Dumpster Dive. I will be doing it rewatching or watching for the first time every movie. So I rewatched this. And it's like little scenes like when Order 66 happens and you kind of have this compilation, you know, this montage of the Jedi dying, which I thought was kind of cool. When you've got the one on the plant life looking planet, which is all like very colorful, very greens, and you know, it's very forestry looking. They do not look like they're on that planet whatsoever. You can almost tell that they're not, you know, compared to
Lots of green screen.
Yeah, compared to the last fight scene between Obi-Wan and Anakin, that looks gorgeous. That looks like they're about to burn to death, but yet they can't do it there. And it's just little scenes like that stand out once you notice them. And you know, when I rewatch / watch these films for Movie Dump Dive, I'm not watching them as a fan. I'm watching them as a reviewer. And so, like, watching this film, because, again, this is my favorite Star Wars film, watching this film as a reviewer, I've noticed now these, like, scenes that are a bit jarring because of the CGI, you know, and General Grievous looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, the Wookiees, Yoda, they all look great, but then you just have these moments where you can tell not as much effort went into them.
Yeah, well, a lot of it just seems rushed, like, to me, just watching the movie. Even before I saw the movie, because I actually saw the midnight release when it first came out. I was working at a video store in a mall right across the street from the theater. And I read the graphic novel for the book, because back then, all the novelizations of books and stuff, even board games, like I had I still have it, actually. Star Wars Trivial Pursuit, the Episode 3 version, actually has some Episode 3 stuff in it, even though it came out before, or like right before Episode 3. So, but again, spoilers wasn't a big thing, because Facebook wasn't, you know, social media wasn't a thing. So I read the graphic novel, and I'm like, it seems okay, but I feel like it's just not, like, I don't know. And then I watched it, and I'm like, I still watched it 5 times in theaters, because that's my thing with Star Wars. Since Episode 3, I saw that 5 times in theaters, and then with every subsequent numbered movie, I had to watch it at least once more. That's why Star Wars 9, which was the last one, The Rise of Skywalker, I think I've seen that 12 times in theaters.
Damn, that's commitment.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Maybe not as big now, just because I think Disney kind of ruined Star Wars with Force Awakens. Really, kind of almost, yeah. Where people think Episode 1 like killed their childhood. Now, I don't believe in the whole kill your childhood thing, destroyed your childhood, because you still have those old movies. You don't have to watch the movies you don't like. So, like, I don't watch Episode 7, but I like 8 and 9, and I'll still watch those. But it's been a while since I've seen 7, because it's just, the movie really just makes me mad. But Episode 3 didn't make me mad. I was just disappointed. But to go with I know you were talking about like some of the scenes that didn't look good, but the fight scene with Anakin and Obi-Wan did. A lot of the reason for that is a lot of the backdrop for the there's a lot more practical effects with that ending fight scene. Even in the backdrop, they had models that they recorded. And everything with the lava, like that's all practical. It may have been composited in, but that's all practically filmed. Versus whenever all the Jedi were getting killed, that was all purely CG except for the human characters. So, and also another fun fact for the clone troopers in episode 2 and episode 3. I'm sure a lot of people know this, but there was not one true clone trooper suit made for either one of those movies. Every single clone in those movies, clone suit, is CG. So, which
Yeah,
can be jarring
that's
whenever they don't have the masks on. You can kind of tell sometimes that it just doesn't match up. It's like Iron Man, where it was the same situation with some of that stuff. But
yeah, you can tell that though because there's the scene where again Order 66 is now kicked off. It's that compilation, and it's the scene where Yoda clicks on what's happening. And he's on the Wookiee planet, and the camo looking clone is knelt down. He's kind of like across the platform from Yoda, and he's obviously held up his hologram. Sidious has said execute Order 66, and he's like, yes, my lord. That looks very CG, and the way that he just stands and walks isn't very human-esque. Like, you can tell there's no actor in there. So yeah, you can tell that, which again, I mean, the way that they did so much with planets, animals, they started delving more into that type of exploration of Star Wars more than the original trilogy did. Obviously, the original trilogy did do that, but they had more budget then for like actual costumes and things like this. So I'm guessing they decided to go down the CG route because it would match. Then Obi-Wan has that lizard-looking thing, which I don't care what anyone says. That thing is stunning. I want one.
that's pretty
And
cool.
people find the noise it makes annoying. I'm like, no, that is effing
works.
adorable.
Yeah.
It fits the creature, and the fact that like Obi rides it around and everything is just absolutely awesome. So, do you think this film sets up number 4?
Yes, that is the one thing that I do like about it, and another reason why I hate The Force Awakens. Just because of how this, even from the end, bridges the gap between, there's differences in the way these movies were shot and made, special effects. So going from episode 3 to episode 4, there's a little drop off in that visual quality, I guess you could say. But George Lucas was smart to, even though there was areas in it that did not bridge very well to the original trilogy, I'm sure we'll get into that too. There were a lot that did.
Yeah, and some of these bridges, I find there's a nice mixture of things that are so obvious and in your face. Like, oh, here you go, this is how this person's this, Anakin becoming Darth Vader, Sidious, why Obi-Wan's on Tatooine, etc., etc. But then there's little tiny ones, like, obviously, in Star Wars 4, 5, and 6, R2-D2 and C-3PO do not say anything. Obviously, R2-D2 don't talk. C-3PO then doesn't say anything about knowing who Darth Vader is. Not once. And obviously, in Star Wars 1, Anakin builds C-3PO. It's one line right at the end when Bale says to one of his commanding troops, "Oh, wipe these droids' memories," and both of them are like, "Wait, what?" And it's just it's 3 seconds of a scene. It's one sentence.
So yes, but no, because if you hear, they're only actually wiping the protocol call droid's memory. So technically, R2 still has his memory. However, this is where I get where kind of defend where he knows but he's not telling, is in the prequel trilogy, He's only talking really to C-3PO for most of the time, and C-3PO doesn't believe a thing he says. So I think he knows what's going on, and he's along for the ride for some things, but he's just quiet on purpose.
See, if you watch number 3 and you look at what R2 kind of had to watch, you know, he saw Padme lie to Obi-Wan, and then he saw Anakin lose his mind and almost kill Padme, and then he saw them two go off and fight each other. Okay, yes, I know he's a droid, he's a robot, but you could almost see why he doesn't want to say anything, because like, to any normal organic being with a brain and a heart, that would be traumatic as fuck. You know, you're not going to want to spill your beans about that. Okay, again, I know he's a robot, he doesn't have a heartbeat or any of that bollocks, but, you know, George Lucas does like giving random looking aliens and robots, you know, kind of like personalities. So you could make that argument. I'm not saying that I agree with that, I'm just saying that you could make that argument.
Yeah. Well, and technically, he doesn't hear, I don't think he hears anything about Anakin being called Darth Vader in episode 3, so maybe he thought Anakin was dead until Return of the Jedi, whenever Luke realizes, or technically it'd be Empire Strikes Back, where Darth Vader reveals himself as his father. But so maybe he just doesn't know until then, and that's why he's along with Luke throughout the journey too. Maybe he just, I don't know. I'm just making stuff up right now, but it kind of makes sense to me.
Well, kinda, yeah, because if you look at when Anakin goes to Mustafar and he lands on that planet, for those who've forgotten, that's the volcanic planet. They both, Anakin and R2, start walking, and Anakin goes, "No, R2, you stay by the ship." So R2 doesn't even know what Anakin's up to. Anakin walks into that building and slaughters all the, you know, the whatever they're called, the alien species that are like, Sidious's followers. He kills all of those dudes first before he finds out. Yeah, separatists. Thank you. Before he figures out that, you know, before he finds out Padme's landed on a ship. So R2's outside. He's across. He's by the ship. He doesn't know what's going on. So like, he never even sees Anakin kill, you know, those people. So like, it kind of plays upon that theory, you know. But yeah, I do like the fact that, granted, there's only one or two things that get set up from the beginning, but as soon as Anakin starts talking to, you know, the Chancellor, and there's this to and fro between, does he stay with the Jedi? Pardon me, does he work with the Chancellor, etc., etc. That's when things are like, oh, okay, right, we have an hour left of the movie. We now need to tie things to Star Wars Episode 4, and that's when things start getting built up to actually making sense.
Yep. And to me, I think, you know, and some of the bridging might be a little bit on the nose on stuff, but everything's going to be on the nose, even if you try to be subtle with some of this stuff. There's no being subtle when it comes to setting up things that are in future movies that were made in the past. One, though, he did a lot to visually connect the next two, in a sense, to where at the very end, whenever he's telling, Organa's telling them to wipe the protocol memories, or droid's memory, they're on the Tantan 4, which is the ship that you see at the very beginning of the next movie. So, like, you already visually connect that they're this. It connects. So they're on the ship at the end of the movie, where they're on the ship at the beginning of the next movie. So there's like a direct connection there. And the captain, the young captain there, or whoever he was telling to wipe the memory droid, he's the captain on the ship in the next one that I guess gets choked out and dies. Of the next one as well.
And also, the very last scene where you've got baby Luke being held by his auntie and obviously his uncle stood, and there's the sunset that mirrors Luke looking out to the sunset in episode 4.
I do have a slight issue with some of that, especially with that. Because, and this is where I don't feel like it connects to it properly, because George Lucas said when he made episode 1 that it's supposed to be seen episode 1 to 6. And so, it being 1 to 6, you knowing that Luke is Darth Vader's son, there's no shock when you find out in 2 movies later in Empire Strikes Back. And the one scene, like, where do you know that they're twins, Luke and Leia, where she names them Luke and Leia? Well, that kind of, whenever you see them kiss, you're like, oh, they're already brother and sister. Like, there's no, it kind of degrades some of the build-ups and some of the surprises in the original trilogy when they explicitly tell you the stuff that's supposed to be a surprise. Like, it's instead of being made as a prequel that's supposed to just connect it as a saga 1 through 6, it kind of disconnects it there to where you already know too much before you even watch the original trilogy.
See, I do believe, though, that it all depends on how you look at it, because I agree with you completely. But sometimes when people want answers and they go, oh, we're going to give you a whole movie to explain this, that's the whole point of the movie. George Lucas saying, oh, you can watch 1 through 6, realistically, he shouldn't have. Because if he wanted to sit there and actually explain everything, including, oh yeah, by the way, how did Anakin, or how did Darth Vader have, Luke, he should have gone down the route of watch 4, 5, and 6, and then if you want to know the answers to why all the stuff happens in episode 4, then watch 1 through 3. Because him saying watch 1 through 6, you can do that. It's a whole, it's a whole block of movies. That's when the whole explanation of a prequel kind of breaks everything, like you said.
Yes, but I feel like they could have done some things to not break that. Like with Anakin, he could have just been referenced as Anakin instead of like his last name, so nobody in the prequel trilogy knew he was Skywalker, because that kind of a big giveaway that he's Luke's dad. And then maybe not have. I understand having his aunt and uncle in the second and third movie, more in the second movie than the third movie, but that also kind of shows you, hey, that's Luke's stuff. And then whenever the kids were born, or just do the Luke thing and then leave Leia out of it, and so when the kids are born, kind of not say that they were twins the whole time. So and that's easier to where baby was born and then you just cut, and then you don't see a scene where Anakin or Obi-Wan talks to Organa about the twins, and then Organa saying, I'll take the girl, blah, 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 and then you seeing, I don't know, they could have done that a little bit different. I also have an issue with Padme dying. Because
Really?
there's no way, yes, because in Return of the Jedi, Luke asks Leia, do you remember your mother? Your real mother. And then she says, I do a little bit, something about just blah, blah, blah. There's no way in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 12, however long from her being born to Padme dying, does a newborn baby remember their mother? So how can she remember her mother if her mother died when she was born? So... And it was explicitly said your real mother, knowing that she was adopted. So, if it was just your mother, and then she mentioned maybe maybe her adopted mother died when she was young, cool, we could understand that, but it was your real mother. So, she didn't say like, "What do you mean, my real mother? I didn't have another real mother." So just one of my things. On top of
Unless the
yeah,
only realistic argument I have there, and it's not a very good one, I actually don't like this at all, but unless that's the only thing that you could say was Leia's first kind of dip in using Force abilities.
I
The
guess you could
Jedi,
see that.
the people with the Force can
Maybe
do all sorts of shit, and obviously we
yes.
see her use the Force in the sequel trilogy. So like maybe that's just her first like unknowingly tapping into it, emotional trauma, that sort of crap just plays around, and maybe that's her first thing is she can remember because it's her using the Force. She just doesn't know that yet, because obviously, there's no Jedi to go, oh, this person has the Force, let's train her. No one's around to do that for Leia. So, maybe that's just that's my argument. But again, it all depends on how you see it.
I guess I could see it that way. Like when she's really, really young, it's like whenever you're young, you believe in Santa Claus and all that. So like
Yeah.
her heart is open to all that. So maybe she can remember that. And then once she gets, a little bit older, when she stops believing fairy tale stuff, that it just and disappears for a while. Because you don't really see her use any sense of the Force until uh, what's the episode 8.
Yeah.
But it also shows that Luke was training her after Return of the Jedi, so she had some training, but not until after Return of the Jedi.
So when it comes to like, if there's one thing because you're talking about things you wish you could like remove for build up, I'm gonna flip that and go, if there's one thing I could push earlier, make it so there's a scene that happens before episode 3. That's Anakin killing Dooku. I wish that was put in episode 2.
Yeah, I could see that. But the only thing I could see that, but then you'll get to where each movie you have a new villain and it like kind of disconnects. Even Grievous, even though I like him as a villain and everything, looks cool, he's just kind of now appears like he's there. So like there's
this is where my argument comes in. So first things first, it kind of goes into our argument of there should have been more build up from Anakin being the bad guy. So don't obviously you can't save the Chancellor, that would have to change. But if the Chancellor's the person who says to Anakin, kill him, and then he beheads Dooku, so that bit's exactly the same. Mm-hmm. That then starts. Yeah, that then starts the whole, because the second he does it, the lightsabers attract, and Anakin goes, I shouldn't have done that. That's not the Jedi way. Keep that in as well. That literally starts at the end of episode 2. He's just killed a bunch of Tusken Raiders. He's just lost his mum. And then, obviously, Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious. So we can start that little relationship building between them. And we can start that little, Anakin kind of defying the Jedi ways type deal. But then that also goes into why the Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, however you want to call him, needs a new Sith. Because in number 3, you have General Grievous. He's on the ship for some reason. He's, air quote, in charge. Everyone's after Grievous and everything. They all believe. And it happens in number 3 anyway. We kill General Grievous. The war can end. They have the Jedi. They all have that mentality. And throughout the film, whenever General Grievous talks to Darth Sidious as a hologram, he'll go, "Oh, don't worry, my new Sith's coming. I'm about to get my new Sith." And it kind of builds up that side of it too, because obviously, Dooku dies within the first 20 minutes. He's dead in number 3, and then it's into, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a new Sith, by the way, just straight away. At least this way we kind of have a build-up of, oh, there isn't a Sith Lord, we have a robot in charge. Grievous isn't, a Sith technically, he doesn't have a Darth name or anything. And the good guys truly believe if General Grievous is gone, then they have a chance of winning the war. Well, Obi-Wan Kenobi kills General Grievous, keep that in, obviously. And that's when it all kicks up with, oh yeah, by the way, I found my new Sith. That's why I wish to put that just that whole killing Dooku thing just one movie back.
Yeah, and I think they could have done more with Chancellor or Palpatine and Anakin. They kind of had a one line in Episode 2 where he's like, "I feel you'll be the most powerful Jedi, whatever." That's about it. Like he doesn't do anything to really. Outside of that, he doesn't do anything to manipulate him. You don't see much manipulation in the first two movies of Anakin, and that's really what gets him to the dark side. And then all of a sudden, Episode 3, it's like all over the place, where it's kind of like out of place if you watch the first two movies. So I think that could have also helped. And the first scene in the Episode 3, if that wasn't so long, then maybe they could put more development from 2 to 3 in there, because I think that's like 45 minutes. Like the first 45 minutes is that Palpatine rescue mission. Like it's almost a movie in itself.
Okay, so I actually wrote this in my notes. When they land the ship, or sorry, Anakin crashes the ship onto the ground, the exact time note is 23 minutes and 44 seconds.
Yeah. So 20 minutes of just fighting droids.
So yeah, it's when Anakin says to Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan says, another successful landing. That's 23 minutes and 44 seconds.
Okay.
That's when they land the ship. So from the very beginning to 23 minutes and 44 seconds is the entirety of, them flying the ships, them crashing into the big one, fighting Grievous, killing Dooku, getting the Chancellor, all that crap. That's all within... So that 23 minutes is a long time. Don't get me wrong, some of the scenes are really good.
Yeah.
I do really like the ship. I very like the very first scene where they're in their little ships. They're piloting and they're flying around, and I do really like that because that looks stunning. That looks so good. They definitely put their effort in that beginning scene. That's
another
cool.
Another fun fact about that beginning scene. So there's so much going on with the spaceships and war and all that kind of stuff. The special effects department people, they jokingly said it's got everything but the kitchen sink. So actually, in one shot in there's a shot of a kitchen sink hitting one of the spaceships. So that way, it had everything and the kitchen sink.
And one thing I really like, and it's just a small attention to detail, whenever they're in the ship fighting Grievous or Dooku or whatever, if you pay attention to the windows, you can actually see the fight still going out in space. Like you can see all the ships and you see lasers going between them and blaster shots and stuff. Yes, that's a weird thing to point out, but for 2005, that's a good little attention to detail. The fact that he's still made it. Oh yeah, by the way, the war is still going on the outside. It's still happening. I do like that.
Well, that's part of George Lucas's, I guess, genius. He's just a visual guy. I know everybody hates the, not as much, but whenever they were around, everybody hated the prequels because of all the special effects. But there's a lot of attention to detail that was put in there, and sometimes whenever they would animate a scene, he would as the director, point out little details here and there to add to make it a lot more real, rather than just busy.
Yeah.
So
before recording this, I tried to find if there was any particular plot or scene that wasn't build up to anything that I could nitpick at, that I didn't like, and I did. And that's the whole thing of Anakin gets asked by Palpatine to be his right-hand man. And then at the same time, Anakin gets asked by Mace Windu to kind of be the Jedi's eyes and ears, to spy on Palpatine. There's nothing going on there. That's it. Literally, he gets pulled one way, pulled the other, and that's it. There's no build up to it. There's nothing happens with it. There's literally nothing except for the big thing of, oh yeah, by the way, I think he's a bad guy. That is the only thing you get from that. That is it. And I don't understand what all this drama was. It's like the second act is mostly this, and I don't get why.
It would have made more sense, again, like in the second movie, if they build up Palpatine as more of a manipulative character,
Yes.
and then maybe towards the end, the Jedi start thinking about maybe we shouldn't trust this guy. But there's not that until that scene. Like literally, there's nothing in any of the movies, 1, 2, or even 3 until that point where they distrust the Chancellor. It just automatically, we don't trust the Chancellor, and you're his right-hand man, which is probably not the guy that you want to ask to spy on him. Especially if you see that he's clouded in his judgment and all that. Like, they can see all that stuff. So, yeah, that does not make sense.
Yeah, it's just like, that's majority of the second act on Anakin's part, and it literally goes from 0 to 100 in a conversation, and I don't understand.
There's like little bits of build up with the whole dream of like killing Dooku and dreaming of Padme dying in childbirth, but outside of that, there's like nothing, and then he's just normal for the rest of the first 2 acts of the movie.
Which, going back to our little theory of maybe when Leia says that she does remember her mum, and we can play on that, maybe she's using the Force. I mean, Anakin does dream the future, and everything he dreams actually does, he literally gets premonitions. That's literally what they actually do happen, which is funny because he spends the entire movie trying to stop it. Not the point, but maybe you could, kind of say, well, the good side of that is Leia dreaming about the past type deal.
I guess I could, yeah.
So, a question for you. What do you think, and he's not in it for very long, but what do you think of the fact Chewbacca's in this?
I don't mind it. However, one of my issues is they didn't make him look like he didn't look like Chewbacca to me. He looked like a Wookiee, but he had none of the Here's one of my points to this is if you watch Solo, they make a conscious effort to make Chewbacca look and feel like Chewbacca from the original trilogy. Even the newer trilogy, even though he's kind of not exactly like him, they do a better job in the sequels. But in this one, he's not necessary. I think that's one of those visual, like at the end where they're on Tantin 4 when they don't need to be on Tantin 4. It's just a visual. Yeah. It's just a visual connection between the movies. I think that's the only reason he's in there at all, but he's not necessary. Being on Kashyyyk, they could have done all that without Chewbacca.
Yeah, I do love some of the other Wookiees' designs, because obviously the only Wookiee we see in the original trilogy is Chewie. That's just fine, that's awesome, but the fact that we get to see their culture, how they lived, you get to see some of their vehicles, we get to see a bit more of them. They don't explain anything, obviously, it's all done just by visual aid, but I do like the fact they actually gave us somewhat of Kashyyyk. I do like that a lot.
Another fun fact, Return of the Jedi was supposed to be Kashyyyk and not Endor. But that was just not possible. So they made pygmy Wookiees, basically.
What's your thoughts on how they portrayed Yoda in Episode 3?
So I felt like he doesn't sound. I know it's Frank Oz, but to me, and it might be just because the whole movie he's been in the sound booth playing Yoda, where like most of the other movies he's on the set, moving a puppet around at least, or doing some of that. Like I felt like he didn't give up. Like it didn't sound like Yoda as much as he does in all the other movies. But at the same time, I think he kind of gave up to quickly at the end, where he lost to the Emperor and he's like, "I'm going to banish myself." Wow, if you banish yourself the first time you ever lost a fight, that's kind of wussy behavior.
Yeah, that bit, I that's too much of a lazy term for me, because obviously they had to explain, Yoda's in episode 1 and 2, he's in episode 3, they had to explain why he's on Dagobah. They had to explain that. And they went down the route of, oh yeah, he lost the fight. Which, don't get me wrong, he lost the fight to one of the most powerful dark side users of all time. Sure, that's a big step down, understandable. But Yoda's meant to be one of the most powerful Force users of all time, and that's what makes him leave. That makes no sense. They could have done anything else, anything else.
So here's my thing too. So this is part of my continuity issues with some of the prequel choices. So I love Yoda, and I'm grateful that he's in the prequel trilogy. However, he should have been a character that was mentioned and never seen. Mostly because the first time you see him again in the original trilogy, you hear him as a great warrior, Yoda, and then he's this little frog character that you don't even know is Yoda till later. So, in the prequel trilogy, they could have mentioned Yoda as, oh yeah, Master Yoda, he doesn't want to be part of the council, he just wants to, be part of all the stuff. He's out there, oh, Yoda defeated these people, or Yoda, he settled this disagreement or whatever for this planet, and just build him up through legend rather than actually him being a part of the trilogy. That makes sense. Now, that's for continuity purposes, but I'm okay with him being in it. But for continuity purposes, I think they could have done something similar to that.
Technically speaking, they could have done, when Anakin's arguing with Obi-Wan constantly about how he didn't get to be master, and he gets aggro about it. They could actually throw in a line where Anakin says to Obi-Wan, yes, okay, I'm on the council, but, Master Yoda was master after X amount of time, and Obi-Wan's like, you do realize that's just a legend, right? Or, Obi-Wan's kind of shuts him down straight away as soon as Master Yoda's mentioned. He's just a legend, or, that's a myth or something. Throw a line like that in, because then that builds up to the whole fact of when Luke gets told, this is the person you need to go to, and he meets Yoda and then later gets named as Yoda. If they did it that way, then that kind of build-up kind of says, oh yeah, by the way, this is why Yoda never got seen, which also plays on the fact of why he didn't get killed in Order 66. Yeah. So, I guess...
Then you can play it off as, rather than him being just, given up after losing a fight, he just lost in the shuffle with all the other Jedi that are that are out there.
So there is one thing that's always bugged me about Episode 3, and rewatching it, there's only one conclusion I can take from it. So at the end, Yoda and Bail and Obi-Wan Kenobi are all talking about what's going to happen with the twins. Obviously, Bail says, I'll take the girl. Me and my wife always wanted a daughter. And Yoda and Obi-Wan talk about how, Obi will take Luke to his family and he'll keep an eye on him. Yoda says to Obi-Wan, I've got more training for you. And that wise masters can break through the nether realm of the Force, and certain Jedi can learn a way to contact them. And obviously Obi-Wan goes, oh, Qui-Gon. So that kind of... The only thing I can think of is that's Force ghosts. That's where the whole ghost, how...
Definitely, yeah.
But that's never explained or anything. He just goes, oh yeah, by the way, you can contact Qui-Gon. But
so there's a small little scene in there whenever Yoda's trying to be in tune to the Force to just, I guess, meditate. You hear Qui-Gon speak. So there's I think it's one of his lines in Episode 1 that you kind of hear while he's doing that. And since you didn't see a Force Ghost in any of the prequel trilogy, that way whenever the Force Ghost Obi-Wan appears in it, it's not as like, oh well, I guess Yoda did say you can contact blah 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 blah. But it doesn't make as much sense because it's you contacting the ghost, but in the prequel, I mean in the original trilogy, it's the ghost contacting the person. So maybe he learns to be so in tune that whenever he does die, he can do whatever.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's got several years. You know, he's not fighting. Okay, I know Obi-Wan the TV show changes that, but Kate puts that away for a second.
Like they just killed that.
Just the movies. If you're just going from the movies, he does have several years of being by himself, keeping an eye on Luke, but he can keep an eye on Luke from a distance. All that jazz. So like he does have time to train and things. One thing I do like about when Order 66 happens and Anakin starts going on his killing sprees and stuff, I like the fact that Yoda actually senses it. Like, he actually gets all queasy and stuff, because that really shows that, like, there's now a balance tip in the Force, because if anyone's going to sense that, it's Yoda. He's literally named, at that time, one of the strongest Force users of all time. So I do like the fact, it's such a small scene, it's literally a couple seconds, but like he drops his walking stick and he gets all like fainty and the two Wookiees with him are like, whoa, you okay type deal. I do like that a lot. That's a small attention to detail I did appreciate.
Yeah.
So is there, because, okay, so you deem this, the one of the worst Star Wars films. Is there anything in this movie that you do enjoy, like a scene or something that you do actually enjoy watching?
Well, I know I kind of bashed the special effects a little bit, but I just liked how it looked for the most part visually. I think sometimes the editing cuts kind of jack things up. The end fight, which most people will say is the best fight in Star Wars, I still deem Episode 1 fight with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon the best lightsaber fight in the series. But I guess as far as that goes, that's about it. Like, it's Star Wars, and it still has those Star Wars elements, and but it was just, again, it's not upsetting like The Force Awakens was with me, because I think that kind of like messed everything up for me on some levels, but it's just okay. Now, this is number 8 of 9 but this is how mine goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which number 8? My number 8 movie is Episode 3. There is no number 9. It goes all the way down to number like 10,000, and then that's The Force Awakens. So to say that this is my second least favorite Star Wars movie is saying I like Star Wars. Force Awakens can just whatever. It's like it's on a different plane of like dislike.
So you mentioned the final fight, and I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed the final fight so much is because it's progressive. You start off with, they're talking, they're throwing banter at each other. Anakin starts talking, but then starts yelling at him, and Obi-Wan's kind of confused, and then they both take off their robes, and they're just stood there. They both pull out their lightsabers, and they start in this little, the landing platform. That's where they start. But that escalates into the control room, which they destroy and stuff. They accidentally deactivate the shielding mechanism, so the machines actually get hit by lava. Then they go onto said machines, and then they're swinging on rope. They've got to jump on floating platforms, and obviously then that lands to the very iconic "I have the high ground," moment. But it's progressive. It's not just. Don't get me wrong. I love the fight you mentioned with Darth Maul and Qui-Gon. Oh, I love that fight scene. That fight scene does not get talked about enough. I love it, but I just love how progressive. The build-up, the music behind it, Anakin gets more rageful, Obi-Wan gets more tactical. But yeah, he doesn't want to do this because, like he said, he saw Anakin like a brother, and he's not realistically allowed to think like that because he's meant to be a Jedi. You're not meant to have emotional connections to anyone, and all this jazz. And it's just like it's so progressive, and it's just so good. It just has so much build up. That's why I like it so much.
The biggest issue I have with the fight is that one scene when they're in that control room, and then they're like standing against each other or facing each other, and then they just like sling their lightsabers around, like not even trying to hit each other. They're just, I guess, trying to be cool. And then they try to do the little force push each other. I didn't like that, and I didn't like the way that was shot. But outside of that, the whole fight was pretty good.
I understand why they did the force push thing though, because
I just
it
don't like the
shows
way it
it-
was shot. I don't know. I just had issues with it.
yeah, I understand. I understand what you mean by the way it's shot. It does look a bit out of place,
Yeah.
but when they do the whole force push thing, Obi-Wan says early in the film that Anakin has surpassed Obi-Wan. Like he's even said that, like Anakin outfeats him now. But the fact that when they do the whole force push thing, that moment they're equal because there is no winner there. They both throw each other back. They're completely balanced in that moment. I like that. But I understand what you mean by the fact they just stand there and twirl their lightsabers. Are they trying to look pretty? I'm confused.
Which actually reminds me of earlier in the movie, whenever they're going to fight Dooku, and I guess Dooku's up on the thing, and Anakin goes off one set of stairs, and then Obi-Wan goes up the other set. This is where some of the editing and I don't know if they just got lazy whenever they made this shot, but Obi-Wan running up the stairs. He's not moving his lightsaber to deflect anything. He's literally just walking upstairs, and then these battle droids, or the bigger battle droids, they're shooting at Obi-Wan while he's not even trying. He doesn't even see them or pay attention to them, and they're just shooting at his lightsaber that's not even moving in his hand. He's just walking up the stairs. So I think maybe after that one, that shot, that kind of. Also, whenever Dooku knocks him out and then tears a little platform down, while on top of him, like the way that moved, like that would have broken his legs.
Yeah.
I know you
Also,
can force heal, blah 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 blah. But
Obi-Wan looks like he's made out of putty. If you
Yeah.
really watch the way it lands on him,
it was CG. It was
on
all
it,
CG.
yeah, obviously, but the way the level that platform lands on Obi-Wan, they made Obi-Wan look like he's made out of play putty
Yeah.
or something. He looks squishy.
Yeah.
It doesn't look
Just-
right.
No.
But so okay, there's something new I want to throw into movie dumpster dive. I'm gonna give you 4 things here, and I want you to rate them out of 5. 1 being completely terrible. They should have just not bothered. 5 being top notch, gold star of approval. So what would you give the plot out of 5?
So I'm probably going to give it a decently low score, like a 2.5. Because there technically wasn't really a plot in the movie. It was more of like, here's all this war stuff, and then let's try to make Anakin Darth Vader. And there didn't seem to be much of an actual story plan.
Okay, next up, characters. So you're not going just at one character. This could be character progression, how the character's portrayed, just the characters themselves. What would you rate them out of 5?
I'd probably go back to a 2.5. This does a big sin like the sequel trilogies did with R2-D2. Is they established C-3PO in episode 2. Like he's going to be a big character. And then somehow now he's gold plated, which is okay because 3 years later, he's been on Coruscant for a few years. But then he's not in the movie.
Yeah,
So,
he.
like
Ooh.
R2D2 and C3PO, they're the glue that sticks all the Star Wars movies together. And then this movie throws our C3PO out. And then the sequels, they throw R2D2 out in the whole trilogy. They replace him with BB-8, which BB-8's cool and all, but he should have been R2D2. And C3PO didn't do anything until Rise of Skywalker when they actually made to let him do something. You know, he was what he needed to be in that movie, but R2D2 was just thrown away. C3PO was thrown away in this movie. So
You brought up R2D2 before I give you the next two. There's something that never made sense to me when it comes to C3PO. Just after Anakin burns up, Obi-Wan heads back to the ship. C3PO says, "We've put Padme, on the ship." Question: how the fuck is C3PO and R2D2 meant to carry a pregnant woman, onto a ship?
well, you know, R2D2 is like a Swiss Army knife. He probably has like a little fold-out bed that plops up and something that comes out of his dome to pick her up. You know,
he's like a walking pocket knife.
Yeah, well, he's a walking plot device. That's what he is. You know, he just
That's very true.
allows stuff to happen.
Okay, visuals out of 5.
I'd probably get it a 3.5. And the reason for that is some of the issues that I had with the effects, but most of the issues with the effects is the way that it was shot digitally. I understand on film, you know, film looks different than digital, but one thing I like about episode 1, where I feel like that is the movie in the prequel trilogy, in my opinion, people will disagree, where the special effects blend in better in that movie than they do in episode 2 and episode 3. And I think the majority of that is the fact that episode 1 was shot on film, where the other two were shot digitally when digital filmmaking was early. Everybody was still shooting on film. George Lucas wanted to go digital, so everything was digital when they shot it. Nothing was really on film. And so it had that digital look to it and didn't look as real as it could have been. Episode 1 feels more real. They did do a lot more practical effects in episode 1 than they did in 2 and 3, but at the same time, even some of the special effects just blend in better on the film than it did digitally.
That's a fair statement. Entertainment value out of 5.
I told you I was not terrible. I'll give it a 3. Like, it wasn't bad. Like, it's rewatchable, unlike Force Awakens. But yeah, 3, and that's being generous, but I'll give it a 3.
So, out of 20, you gave this film an 11.5.
Pretty much.
And that is something we'll be adding to Movie Dumpster Live every time we do a film now. So if people want to know mine, I gave, obviously you're forgetting this is my favorite Star Wars films, obviously, and this is one of the reasons why I like doing this with you, because we differ a lot, which is perfectly great. I gave the plot a 5 because I'm going to use the same argument as what you gave it a 2.5. This is the build up to Darth Vader, and I think it's done pretty good. Characters, I gave a 4 because I mean, look at my Discord name, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, this is the reason why I adore Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequel trilogy. And okay, yes, Anakin's a bit stiff, I agree, but I just love the shift to him being evil. I love Mace Windu. Adore Yoda, all that stuff. Visuals, it keeps changing between a 3 to a 4, only because now that I've rewatched it and some of these clones are just jarring as all fuck, I can't get that out of my head. So I'll put that as a 3. And entertainment, it's my favorite Star Wars film, so I put that as a 5. You know, so like,
fair enough.
So like, I've given it a 17 out of 20, which is, again, you know, we're allowed to have our different opinions.
Yes, that's true.
But to be fair, I was not expecting your your rating out of it to be over 10. So that you got to give it, got to put it that somewhere.
Like I told you, my top 1 through 8. It's episode 1. I'm not sure what the number is there, but I'm sure because that's my favorite. No, it's not my favorite Star Wars. It's my favorite prequels. Return of the Jedi is my favorite. It's also my first Star Wars. But from Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back in episode 1, like they're pretty close. And then for 2. Wait, I've completely left out the sequels. But yeah, we don't need to talk about them anyway. But they're all decently close. The sequels, though, it goes down to right before episode 3, like my number 7. That's the Last Jedi, which is at the point when I first watched that movie, it was a downgrade from episode 3, but subsequent rewatches made me appreciate it more, where episode 3 I just felt the same every time I watched it. And then after episode 3, it's just like you have to go down, like pretend like Star Wars Holiday Special is not even in the atmosphere or the whatever subsurface of where Force Awakens is for me.
Okay, so my last question for...
And I saw that one 9 times in theaters, or 7 times. It was 7 times.
Damn. My last question to you is, do you believe Revenge of the Sith is a good title for this movie?
Yes. So at the time, before it came out, so again, this is before social media, I was on StarWars.com every single day because they had a bunch of just awesome stuff. Like George Lucas, whenever he had it, he cared about the fans, even though the fans bashed his first 3 movies, but he did a lot in the marketing up the year up to the movie. Every single month, I know this, I'm going chasing a squirrel here, but I got a point when I get to it. But anywho, every single month they would have a short behind the scenes look in the movie, and have a theme for 12 parts. So the first 3 movies, there's these 12-part little behind the scene things that started a year before the movies were released, and they're all pretty cool from episode 1, 2, or 3. One better than, like, just progressively got a little bit worse with some of the stuff they did with that. But they didn't reveal the I forgot when they revealed the title, but I was on not message boards, but just sites that were like, hey, this is the title, this is the title, this title. And almost everybody thought it was going to be Revenge of the Sith. Like, it made the most sense, only because you have the Sith returning in the first 2, and then you had Return of the Jedi, which originally was actually going to be called Revenge of the Sith Jedi, and they changed the title before the movie was released. And so it made sense that it would be Revenge of the Sith to kind of poetically, like, it's... George Lucas does things on purpose. Like prequel trilogy, there's a lot of things in each one that was in the prequels just because he calls it poetry. It's like you have your rhymes and your stanzas, so it's one of those rhyming things when it comes to all that poetry, I guess you could say. So it makes sense to the movie because it is the Revenge of the Sith. Now, it does give away too much technically, but everybody kind of knew, and the trailers gave away basically everything in this story.
That's fair.
But I was excited for it. I watched the trailer, like I recorded. So the final trailer, which was I was working at a video store, and I was working that night. And I'm like, crap it. But I had my VCR set. 2005 was a long time ago. DVD. I've had DVDs were around, but I didn't have a DV player that could record. But they were going to play the final trailer during the show The OC, which is this teen soap opera, late night soap opera. Makes no sense for it, but so I was at my video store that I was working at, and in the back room I had the OC going on in the back TV, and I kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the stupid people, they put the preview on right after the show ended, so I didn't even have to do that. But then I watched it. I recorded it, and I watched that thing over and over and over. I was so excited for that movie, and then I was so let down. So, not the first time I was let down. The first Spider-Man movie. That was the first time I was ever really let down in a movie I was excited for. But I digress on that point. We already made that point. There's an episode for that. But to answer your question, I think the title suits it.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's been us talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So this was my pick of a movie. So of course, if you guys, maybe you side with Ben, maybe you don't think it's great, maybe you side with me. Let us know on the YouTube channel.
You know, most people will not side with me because
you'd be surprised. Actually, you'd be surprised. You're not the first person I've met who said that Star Wars 3 is the worst one. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in.
The worst one.
It was, true. It's in your bottom of the list, it's not the bottom.
No, it's not even in the list. It's not even in the list. Like, that's... I mean, no, it is. Sorry. I'm thinking about The Force Awakens. That's not in my list. Episode 3 is. It's just last on that list.
Fair enough. So yeah, there you go. That's us talking movie dump dive of Episode 3 of Star Wars. And of course, if you're listening to us on Spotify or your podcast platforms or wherever you want to listen to us, don't forget to rate us, I guess. I don't know how podcast platforms work. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and stuff. See, I'm not the only one. Ben doesn't get it either. I'm good. But thank you guys for tuning in. Of course, we've been Ty and Ben. This is Movie Dump Dive, where we take and try and speak in a movie, and we'll just talk about it. Again, they're not good, they're not bad, they're just movies we want to talk about. And eventually, the partners to the podcast, that's the Zia to Hear a Lot, the Three Ranger Bros, some of my voice actors, they'll get to pick films that we want that we get to talk about as well. But that'll be later down the year. I do have other plans as well to kind of mix it up and throw in other movies. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Of course, we're of passion, everybody. I love you all, and I shall see you guys in the next one.
What you have just listened to is a product created by the Three Ranger Bros Studio.
Hosted by three cosplaying fathers who
happen to be massive geeks of all sorts of fandoms.
They are Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger,
Cosplay Dude 637,
and Ty Tiger.
The studio covers different types of YouTube videos, TikToks, podcasts, and live streams.
If you wish to find out who cosplays who, the YouTube channels, the TikTok accounts, and the podcasts, and all of the other social media platforms,
please go to the 3rangerbrostudios.com.